Welcome back. So today I am going to teach you how to make a gorgeous spring wreath. It can be put on your door, or perhaps it's to remember a loved one to go into their grave. I'm going to be using platypus moss this time, which is slightly different from the sphagnum moss that we used during Christmas. So this is more kind of a carpet moss, and it's actually a lot prettier. It's much greener on the top, but the method for putting it on your wreath is exactly the same. So we're just going to make little sausages, pop it on, and we're going to just wire around so it's nice and secure onto the wreath. If the moss is dried out slightly, you can just give it a bit of water, give it a bit of a spritz with a water sprayer. And as I'm binding, so I am leaving approximately a 1.5 to 2 inch gap, and we're just going to keep going. Now, if you still have a wreath from Christmas, you could just take everything off of that and use the framework. If it's dried out, just pop it in a bit of water to add some moisture back into the moss. If you don't have real wire at home, you could do this with some garden twine. And then I'm going to cut off an end, and then using this as a knitting needle, I'm going to pop it under the wreath ring. I'm going to go under again, and this time I'm going to make a little slip knot. So it is nice and secure and it's not going to go anywhere. And then I'm just going to tuck it in. And then that is your wreath ring mossed up, ready to add some foliage. Okay, so we're now going to start adding some foliage to our wreath. I've just whipped out into the garden and I've managed to get some bits of olive. So I've trimmed my trees down for that. And I've also got some little sprigs of rosemary to go in there, and I also have some Parvi eucalyptus. So we put the foliage on slightly differently, so I'm going to cut little short sprigs of foliage, and I am going to stick them into the moss. And the reason that we're sticking them into the moss is that will be the water source to keep them going. And I'm going to make sure my foliage all goes in the right direction, or in the same direction, so you get kind of a Catherine wheel effect. Okay, so it's all just going in. It is very sparse. That's how I want it to look. If you can't get your hands on sort of the eucalyptus, have a look around your garden. Things like Pittosporum work really, really well in this sort of design. Anything that's kind of got a hard stem. So I'm going to continue to foliage this up, and I will show you what it looks like once it's ready to go. Okay, so now we have the wreath foliaged up. It is quite sparse, but quite light looking, and that's what I was going for. I'm now going to attach my hook, which is just using a little bit of string with a double knot. And to do that, I'm just going to pop it under the frame and put it through. And then this is going to sit at 12 o'clock on my desk. So this is how the wreath is going to look when it is on your door. The next step is to add our bulbs to the wreath. I have got some blue mascari bulbs that look like this. So quite pretty, quite delicate. And I've also got some pretty pink hyacinths as well. To add the bulbs to your wreath, simply just going to place them on top of the wreath, like so. And then using a stub wire, I'm going to make a hairpin, so I'm going to fold it in half, and then that goes over the top of the bulbs. I'm going to push it through the wreath, and then the other side, just going to pop them back on themselves so it's nice and secure in place. Now if you don't have stub wires, you can always use a little bit of string or some ribbon or raffia, anything at all that you've got, and you simply tie them on. So I've added all my bulbs to the wreath, so they're all kind of coming up sort of in the same direction. I've only put one in. They've got a little narcissi just nestled down here, so that one will grow quite big, which is why I put it at the side so it can come on up here. And then I'm going to start adding some of the flowers. To attach the flowers to the wreath, there's a few different ways that we can do this. Any cut flowers, I'm going to be using these, which are orchid tubes on sticks. Now these are 15cm ones. They are probably a little bit too big, so I am going to be cutting them off before I pop them in. And then flower wise, we're going to put in some viburnum, which is this beautiful zesty green, which will just really lift the wreath, give it a bit of pop. Also have some gorgeous pink ranunculus. These will actually go on for quite a while and they will open up nice and blousy. Beautiful, beautiful spring flowers. Also my faves, tulips. Can't beat tulips, love them dearly. And I also have these stunning anemones. Now these are really, really big ones. Generally they're a little bit smaller, but these were gorgeous. So we're going to pop some of these in as well. So I'm going to just cut some viburnum. I'm going to pop them into the tube. Now sometimes that hole is actually a little bit tight, so I'm just going to give it a little snip with a pair of scissors. That just helps to feed the viburnum in, like so. I'm going to give it a cut, make the tube smaller, and then it's the tube that actually goes into the wreath. So just in on a nice angle for you. And I'm going to put a couple of these little clusters in, just to kind of balance out. One just won't look right at all. Make sure you take off any of the little leaves. If you try to get leaves and stems into these little tubes, it won't work. Okay, and I've got this one more to the top. And don't worry if you can see the tubes. Again, that's something we will come back to, that we can sort when we're doing our little finishing touches. And now I'm just going to put just one on its own. I don't want it to look kind of too symmetrical, but at the same time I do want to balance it out. With the tubes as well, you do kind of need to make sure that the tubes go up into a wreath, so don't have them going down. Sometimes, although the rubber grips in them are really good, the water can come out. So I'm just going to keep adding my flowers. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished. So that's the wreath with all the flowers in, ready to go. What I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of filler flower, just to give it a little bit of something else. So for that I have some lemonium, some China pink lemonium. And I also have some of this, which is Janista, sometimes known as Brune. It's got a really, really nice scent to it, but it'll just add a little bit of texture. And then if needed, I do have some wax flower as well. Now with this, it doesn't need to go into the tubes. It's quite a hardy stem. So I'm just gonna snip off little bits, and I am just going to add it. Just pop it in to the wreath for a bit of added texture. This is the great thing about working with moss, is that you don't need to cover up your foam. If we were using a foam base, then you're constantly trying to, cover all that foam because it's not very pretty. Whereas if you see some of the moss coming through in this design, doesn't really matter. It still works really, really well. Okay, and then to finish off, here is the wreath all flowered up. I am just going to add some little bits of moss to cover some of the tubes that I can really see. To do that, I'm just getting little clumps, making a little hairpin, cutting down some stub wire, and then I'm just going to pop it over the tube and poke it into the moss. So this moss is completely sustainable. We haven't used plastic, although we've got the plastic tubes in there. They can be reused, which was one of the reasons why I've used them. The other great thing about this wreath is that you can change the flowers. So because it's got cut flowers in, it's not going to last anywhere near as long as the Christmas wreath did. The foliage will last, but the flowers will die off. We've got the bulbs in, which will continue to grow, but you are probably going to have to replace the anemones and the ranunculus as they go over. And the nice thing about that is that you can just change it up each time you add some more flowers to it. But I love just how delicate it is, the flowers in there, the bit of Janista just finishes off this design beautifully. It just gives it a bit of texture on the door that will kind of move in the wind. And although obviously we can't have guests at the moment, it will certainly make you smile every time you come home. But that's it, all done. So fairly straightforward, doesn't need a huge amount of flowers. If you have any questions, obviously let me know, pop it in the comments and I will get back to you. And if you'd like me to put together kits for you to be able to do these, then let me know and we'll see what we can do.